Welcome to the Two Money Guys podcast. I am Robert Rio, along with my temporary co-host for this week, Mike Monfredi of the Mic'd Up blog. How are you doing today, Mike?
Doing well, Rob. Thanks for asking. Glad to be here. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. It is so nice to have you here while the other Michael's away. It's nice to have a different voice here for a little bit.
It's an even trade, 1-for-1, Michael for Mike.
Well, we have an incredible show for you today as we dive into the world of net worth and sit down with film and television music composer, as well as our good friend, Andrew Marcus, who also composed our intro music. But first, let's roll that intro. All right, our article for today comes from physicianonfire.com and is entitled, Should You Track Your Net Worth? This article compares knowing your net worth to knowing your basic vital signs, such as your blood pressure. And by knowing it, you'll know how healthy your finances are. It also claims that your net worth, more than anything else, is the overall measure of where you stand financially. First of all, I guess we should go over how you calculate your net worth. I mean, your net worth is, in its basic form, your assets minus your liabilities. So it's basically anything that's worth money or positive minus anything that you owe money on, or the negatives is going to be your net worth. So net worth, basically your assets can be cash, stocks, bonds, businesses, investment properties, liabilities, obviously your debts, your student loans, mortgages, your vehicles. Now, there's going to be some exceptions there, which we're going to talk about, but I do think that net worth is a good, he compares it to your blood pressure. I might compare it to your pulse, but yeah, I mean, it's a good indicator of your financial health. And I think you definitely should track this. What do you think, Mike? I mean, do you think this is like the end all be all of your financial status, state, or do you think it's really just another number?
I think it's one of the most important things that you can track. I agree with the author here, Physician on Fire. And if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I haven't tracked my net worth as of like 3 months ago. I had never done it. Frankly, I was just terrified because we just ended up buying a business. We've got student loans. We have a mortgage on our house. And frankly, I was terrified of what that number would look like. So I just kind of ignored it for a while. But I bit the bullet like 3 months ago. And when I got everything in there, all the debts and all the assets and, positives and negatives, it was a lot different than I thought it would be. And the process of calculating this net worth for us was kind of informative as well. It gave me a real 10,000 foot view of our financial situation. And going through that exercise was really helpful for me to get an understanding of where our money is, what we can access as far as like what our liquid cash is, and then obviously, I was hyper aware of our liabilities, but it put things into perspective. And it's like, it's not always the negatives that you're looking at. There's a lot of assets that hopefully can come with that, at least for our situation. So for me personally, I've been doing it for the last 3 months, and it's been really interesting to see the things that you can do with the different assets and liabilities that you have to manipulate your net worth up or down. I think it's a great overview to give you kind of a map to say, okay, this might be a good area to focus on. You ever tried stuff like that?
I'm like you. I've been afraid to do it. So I've never really fully tracked my net worth, but it is like you said, I think a lot of people are aware of their negatives, their liabilities. And I don't think that people are really truly aware of their assets until they go through the exercise of finding out their net worth and figuring that out. There's a lot of things that you have asset wise that you may not realize that you have until you go through this. And, all you concentrate on in this, financial, I'm not going to say movement, but if you are coming from like a debt-free journey or whatever, all you concentrate on are your debts. I want to pay my debts. I want to pay my debts. I want to pay my debts. But you never look at your true assets to say, this is what I truly have. Mm-hmm. So you never know if you're positive or negative in the big scheme of things. So I can't say that I truly went through the entire exercise with all my assets, but that's something that I am really looking to do. What are some assets? I mean, how did you go about it? What are some assets maybe that we could include in there that we may not think are assets?
So I'm actually looking at my spreadsheet right now. timely, but I've heard some debate. Some people say, well, do you include your house as an asset? Do you include a vehicle as an asset? I think a lot of people would agree that the house, the portion that you own is on there. So
yeah, I would think your equity would be an asset.
Yeah, it has to be, right?
Yeah.
The debate that I've heard is more about your vehicle. There are some people, at least some articles that I've read, that say, hey, the vehicle, you can't really look at it as an asset. But somebody asked me a question. I don't know if it was on Twitter or maybe as a comment on one of my articles, but it's like, do you calculate your vehicle? And I said, well, hey, is the vehicle anything that I could sell and get money back in return for? If that's the case, then that's an asset, because that thing, I could trade it in and get cash back for it. So when I was going through everything that we have, I listed big items like both of our cars. Obviously, we have our business, the equity that we have in our house, and some of the other smaller, more nominal values. Like we don't have any expensive jewelry or artwork or anything, but a couple of paintings hanging on the wall, nothing that's too ridiculous. I didn't really include that stuff. Now, some people that maybe put more focus on that and have more wealth in jewelry and other stuff that you might have throughout your house, then I'm sure that those are things that you could calculate as well. But for us, I kept it pretty bare bones. I looked at basically our cars, our business, our house, and then all the accounts that we have. Now, I guess this is an important distinction. If you were to go through this exercise, would you include retirement accounts that you can't touch in the short term, or is that something you go away from? I know what I did, but what do you think, Rob?
I think I would include them because I'm eventually going to be able to use that.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I did too. And it's kind of interesting. So I guess depending on how you have your spreadsheet or I guess what program, if you're using one of the apps or one of the services to calculate your net worth, it depends on how they're set up. But
that's a good question. So you said you have your spreadsheet up. So did you just build your own spreadsheet, or do you have an app or a program that you used?
Yeah, I did. I built my own spreadsheet, and I've used Mint since the beginning of time.
Yeah, I use that. I love Mint.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I could build a budget in there. It's easy. It tracks all of my accounts. It links up effortlessly with everything. And I've had the thing set up since, I don't know, it must be since Mint came out, at least 8-10 years ago. And it works. It just works. So I've been hearing all this fuss about personal capital, and everybody's like, you got to try personal capital. And everybody's got an affiliate link on one of their articles or on the sidebar or whatever. Say, sign up, it's free, and it tracks your net worth. And it's, eventually, I think it was like a couple of years ago, I bit the bullet and I was like, all right, I'll try it. Let's see what all the fuss is about. And I got on there, and it might have been my personal situation, but I had some difficulty connecting to some of the unique accounts that I have. My day job is with a state agency in the state that I live in. And one of the the servicers that we use isn't one of the more popular things. Think like local credit union, basically, right? For whatever reason, personal capital couldn't connect to that agent or that entity. So it was a little bit clunky getting it started, but eventually I got it set up. It gave me a good picture of what my net worth was, but I didn't have, I could put our business checking account in there, but I couldn't put like, hey, this is the value of our business, or at least I didn't do it. And maybe admittedly, it's not me diving into this personal capital platform well enough, but it just seemed kind of clunky for me. And for whatever reason, I backed out. And then I started getting phone calls from their free advisors offering this free service to, hey, let me analyze your portfolio and your situation. And, we'll see where we can help you save money, which on its face is probably a good thing. But I told the first couple that called, I was like, hey, not really interested right now. We were going through the process of buying our business, so we didn't really have any cash at that moment anyhow. And they just kept calling. And for whatever reason, it just rubbed me the wrong way. And I quit the app, deleted it off my phone, but they still keep calling.
Yeah. And that's bad business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm putting my own opinion in there, but Mint is not a sponsor, obviously, but I love Mint. I loved it from day one. I love all their products, but it definitely gives you a good overview. And Mint has always connected well to all my accounts and all my products. I've never had an issue with that. So yeah, if you're looking for an app or a product to figure out net worth or at least keep track of all your finances, Mint is definitely a good option.
Mm-hmm. But to answer your original question, if you don't mind, is that, I just ended up building a spreadsheet that kind of works for everything that we have. So it's, I guess, a little bit not time sensitive, but it requires a little extra manipulation. But literally, I'm sitting here at my desk, and when we get off this recording for this podcast, I've got a couple of bank statements that I'm just going to change a couple of numbers, and then the overview number will change, and then I'll type that into my net worth over time graph that I have, and then I'm done, 3 minutes, no big deal. I think the initial setup period for this spreadsheet obviously was more than that, but I've got it just how I want it. It shows exactly what I want to see. It gives me, like I said initially, first of all, it allows me to crawl out of my hole that I was hiding in, all the debt that we have hanging over our head right now. I realize that there's also some assets that come with that. So that's the first thing, that it visually lets me see that. And then the second thing is I can look at, what are our liabilities? How have those changed over the last 3 months? I input the interest rates and all that stuff as well. And then also at the assets, like, is the business, is it gaining value? Is the house gaining value? And it's fun. I like to play with it. And I think it's a great place to start from when you're trying to get a picture of your overall financial health.
That's good. So I think we can agree that the net worth is a vital number in keeping track of your financial state. To keep track of it and to see the numbers go up, especially.
Well, yeah,
is the goal.
Right.
But if they do go down, then you can adjust your assets in a way that should even it out or make it go the other direction for you.
Well, can I say one thing before we move off this topic real quick?
Absolutely.
Is that what you said initially about, with our personal finance space and our focus, I guess, inherently, and it makes sense, is to get rid of the debt, right? But I think if that's the only thing that you look at, then you're not really maximizing your abilities and all the tools that you have at your disposal. So, for example, we bought our business and then, long story, we were forced to move to a new office. And when we did that, we had to take on debt to pay for the cost of creating that new office. But once we ended up paying all those bills, the loans were they settled out as they would. We got a new appraisal and a new valuation on our business after all that stuff was done. And the thing jumped significantly. So it's not a function of us increasing our revenue or anything like that, even though that's also happening as well. It's just, there are other ways that you can manipulate that net worth number. If you can increase the value, say you own property or whatever. We're in a commercial center for our business. And it actually just went through a sale itself recently. There's a couple of vacant spaces in that commercial property. Now, I know that the landlord that was the original owner was trying to get a bunch of places in there, a bunch of new merchants, so that, it would be a more valuable thing, so that when he went to sell it, he could say, hey, here's another tenant that I have on my books. This thing is going to bring in more money. So in essence, it's worth more. There's a lot of other things that you could do. I think that tracking the net worth helps in those regards too.
Absolutely. There are definitely other factors or other parameters that you can shift.
Sure thing.
All right. There's our article, again, by Physician on Fire at physicianonfire.com. We'll have the link in our show notes. And now, on to the interview. We would like to welcome award-winning composer and the creator of our incredible intro music, Andrew Marcus, to the show. How are you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Wonderful. You compose music and you score commercials and television shows and other projects. Could you tell us a little bit, we're going to get right into this, about how you started or became interested in doing that?
Sure. I was always into it. In high school, when I was getting ready for college and I realized I'm probably not going to be Billy Joel, I started to get interested in film music. I studied in school and hit the pavement hard and just worked my way in, busted my way in. So persistence is a big key, I think.
That's awesome. What does a typical day look like for you?
Typical day, I have kids. So if any of the folks listening have kids, I'm sure they'll relate. I get them ready for school. I get to the office. I'll check emails. I'm big on my coffee. I like to have a cup or two. And actually every day is different. I have a different project. Sometimes I'm working on 2, 3, 4 in a day because they just coincide and overlap. And while one client's getting notes ready, I'm working on another client's work. TV and film music tend to have revisions, so there's always more to do. In terms of exactly how it looks, I pretty much work from 8 until 6 at night and occasionally a little longer. It would be working on music or working on sound or both for any number of projects.
Now, you've been involved in some, pretty awesome projects. Looking back, do you have a particular favorite that you're involved in?
I love them all, but there's one that I was very attached to. It's called Walk a Mile in My Pradas. I did this score a long time ago, just before my kids were born. It's this great movie. It's sort of like a Freaky Friday where a gay man and a straight man don't understand each other. This is weird. They curse each other out over a magical Christmas ornament and they change sexual orientations. So it's got that Freaky Friday kind of thing. It's going to be on the Here Network this holiday season. It's called Walk a Mile in My Pradas. It was just a movie with a lot of heart, a lot of humor, and a lot of good energy. And I thought, I'm glad it's kind of coming around and it's going to be on TV for people to see.
Oh, that's awesome. So what does the creative process look like? I know you did the music for our show, and you just blew my mind because I didn't really have a vision, but then you created this music and it's like, wow, that's what my vision was. So how do you do that?
Well, I like to start by asking questions and see what the filmmaker or podcaster is interested in. So specifically with you, I asked you what you like to listen to, and you told me that you liked Pink Floyd. Gosh, what were the other two groups? It was Pink Floyd, Eminem, and
Nirvana.
Nirvana, right. So I tried to put in a little bit of all of that in a way that made sense.
You nailed it.
That's a remix that was just years in the making right there is, Pink Floyd, Eminem, and Nirvana, because they sync like no other groups in the world, right?
Exactly. Well, we're in a very niche world now. And I think in terms of film and TV, we're getting more specialized things that don't have to appeal to as many people to be done. So you have these great Netflix shows, Amazon shows, Hulu shows, as well as your big network and your cable networks. So things don't have to appeal to everybody and everybody gets to see what they like, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and you nailed it. I loved it.
Oh, I'm so glad you liked it. The creative process is trying to get in the minds of the people who ask you to do the music and give them what they want, but also to do it better than they want, because they don't think about music all day and I do. So I'm very quick to say, hey, I think that's a great idea, but let's try this. And if you don't like it, then we'll go with the other thing. And very often they like what I bring them. So it works out nice.
Quick question, diving a little deeper into that.
Sure.
Is the form you send out to people, it's very in-depth.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's not just the simple, do you like classical music? Do you like rock? Do you like this, that? I mean, you try to get into the mind of your client. I mean, you ask them for descriptive words, for adjectives, for feelings, for emotions. Is that for any particular reason? Now, I know why you do that, but was that a process that you developed over a number of years just by going through the process with clients, or is that something you've always done?
That took a long time to get to. There was one particular time I was working with a client and they said, I don't remember what they said they wanted exactly. And I brought it to them and they said, it's not quite right. And I said, you asked for A. Is this A? He said, yes. This is B. Is it not? They goes, yes, it is. C, D, whatever it was. And it still wasn't there. So there's so many ways you can interpret a set of words or a word or an adjective or something descriptive. But when you start to put many in place, it narrows down the field of infinite quite a bit. So if something's dark, that could mean a lot of things. If something's dark and creepy, that's fewer things. If it's dark, creepy, slow, and low notes, that's something different. If it's slow, dark, creepy, low notes, and ominous, then we're really narrowing things down. Then it takes fewer passes. So over the years, I've developed that. And when putting together the YouTube channel, Film Music Mentor, which is strangely enough, not for musicians, but for filmmakers, I wanted to give them tools to figure out what it is that they want. So either myself or someone else could better give it to them.
That's a neat project you launched too, the Film Mentor. So, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So Film Music Mentor is a vlog, and it's many different tutorials, I would say, on different aspects of putting music into film. For instance, when do you keep it weird? How do you know if you're choosing a poser or a composer? Why are Bobby Flay and a film composer more alike than a composer and Bono? Or why is a film composer more like Bobby Flay than Bono? What do you know about flow? Mistakes to make before you even go on set. And I bring stories from my career and just lots of things that you'd never think would be an issue come up. whether they're creative, legal. Legal is a big thing. We have a whole episode on how not to get a lawsuit. And eventually, almost everything you could think of will be up there. We're going to start doing Film Music Mentor episodes with collaborators. So we'll get to talk about specific projects and the collaborative process and how it differs for everybody.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think that's important too, because so many people are, have access and the ability to make films now, especially with the price of technology and everything coming down. And, maybe one thing they don't really think about or they don't know how to do is handle the music end of it.
Right. And it's complicated because copyright law is complicated. And we live in a sort of this new do-it-yourself era, this everything being free kind of society. But copyright law isn't. There are so many ways that people can get, at worst, their project could get held up or not get out there. And at worst, they could get sued. They don't realize that there's an easier way to do things. And there's lots of people with these skills that could help them out.
What's a tip or maybe a mistake that you see aspiring filmmakers make with their music?
I think maybe the number one mistake or misguided notion, a lot of times, well, this is kind of a two-sided coin. I've done quite a few projects where people write their story and they want to produce their story. And the music they listen to in life, that they listen to recreationally, I like to say, doesn't necessarily mean it will work in the telling of their story. In fact, usually it won't.
Interesting.
Yeah, it just wouldn't work. If we were doing your story, Michael, and we were covering some kind of loss, Eminem might not necessarily work, or Pink Floyd or Nirvana, because you might need something very sparse or something without words, something instrumental that will capture a very simple emotion and change quickly. So it's really an art, but also a toolbox of skills.
It's interesting. I never thought about that. Rob, what music would you use to tell your life story?
Something sad no, I'm just kidding. I think it would be something in the classic rock vein. I used to play guitar for a classic rock band, so I'm into that. Usually driving some road trip songs. Yeah.
I never thought about that before. Andrew, what music would tell your life story?
I grew up in Long Island and played the piano, so Billy Joel, by law, I have to love Billy Joel.
Sure.
I like progressive rock. I like all kinds of classical music, jazz, theater music, but kind of like a chef has an appreciation for every ingredient, whether they use it or not, or whether they like it or not. I have an appreciation for every kind of music and every instrument, whether I use it or not.
Yeah, I got that sense from working with you on our music. So you really have appreciation and a love for music, all genres of music and instruments.
We should throw that out to our listeners and have them go to twomoneyguys.com and click on the leave us a question or ask us a question and leave us a voicemail and tell us what type of music would be the soundtrack to their life if they had to choose. That would be a good question for our listeners to follow up on.
It would. I love that. I love that question. That's like on my new question list to ask people. I like that.
And it's interesting to ask Andrew that question because he's dealt with so many different genres of music with clients. I think it would be hard to pick a genre or a type of music for him in his life because his life is dealing with other genres of music.
That's true. My story is telling other people's stories.
Through music. Yeah, exactly.
I know everyone hates getting put on the spot and you don't want to say anything bad about anything ever, but I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I mean, is there any particular music? Is there any particular style of song or whatever that maybe people ask you for quite a bit that you're kind of like, oh, I'm so sick of hearing this or doing that?
Well, actually, it's not a specific thing, but I always find it fascinating when people want something that's like something very popular that's already in a bunch of commercials. I always think that's weird. I'm not commenting on this song. I think it's a great song, but Portugal the Man has this great song that's been popular for a while.
Feel It Still.
Yeah. Feel It Still. And it's in every preview, in every commercial. And I just don't know why anybody would want to use it to brand themselves when it brands everybody else. So the first bunch of people that said, hey, this is a great song, let's use it, that makes sense to me. But the idea of using what everyone else does when branding is to separate yourself, that doesn't make sense to me. And I find it irritating.
Yeah, I can see that.
Speaking of that, Andrew, I was going through and doing a little research on you. Do you still do the branding, the music branding?
Sure. Yeah.
Could you go into that a little bit? Because that interested me in doing some research on you. The music branding is very interesting in my eyes because you notice there's logos, there's trademarks, there's visual branding, but to do branding through music is very interesting and it's very subtle.
Yes.
It's almost subliminal. So, I mean, could you explain that a little bit?
Sure. I came up with this system called audio kinetic branding, or AKB, which it's like an algorithmic approach to putting sound and music into something that's going to sell something else. So the idea behind it is that every couple of seconds, your brain needs a recharge to match the visual, or you'll lose interest. If the music just repeats or stays static, after a couple of seconds, or maybe 12 seconds, it's not going to work anymore. It's not going to do anything. It'll just be background noise. It's when our eyes and our ears, we experience the same thing together. It does something in the brain, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but I just happen to know this through my work, that grounds us into the reality of whatever we're presenting, and it keeps the audience's attention. And we have to do that a multitude of times in even a short 30-second presentation.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Yeah, that's why sound design helps. If a lot of times you see in a piece of content or a commercial, they'll just have the picture and then the music track. It's actually pretty boring. And people will look away, and if there's a song they like, they may just check their texts, check their email, whatever, their Instagram while they're listening to it, but they won't absorb what the brand is trying to show. So when we're grounded in, you're watching a car and you hear the tires moving, you hear the brakes, you hear the acceleration, and you hear the music, and the music changes with the cuts of the picture. It's much more engaging. It's exponentially more engaging.
I think so. Looking back on your career, is there something you learned from the industry that you found surprising?
Yes, and I did mention this when we did our interview. I think that almost every artist in the world, and this could be maybe not just artists, but entrepreneurs, no one goes into starting a business or an enterprise thinking that they're going to not be Steve Jobs. They don't go, I'm going to start this incredible thing where I make $1,000 a week or anything like that. People shoot for the stars, which they should. But I always thought, and I know all writers, actors, filmmakers, they think as soon as somebody influential hears what I do and meets me, everything's going to change. And that's not true. It's a struggle to get there, and it's a struggle to stay there. And you have to just keep being good at what you're doing, keep being good to people. I try not to underestimate people. Even if I'm more experienced than them, I try to really be respectful of their vision and really give them what they want and need. Like a guy like Tom Cruise, he's got to work to stay at the level he's at, whatever you think of Tom Cruise, but he's undeniably a big star. I don't think he could be doing Mission Impossible 25 or whatever just came out this summer if he wasn't constantly working to stay at the top where he is.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have any tips for people that are trying to make it in your field?
Yeah, I would say there's different kinds of currency. There's money, that's important. There is also connections are important. And sometimes something doesn't work out with one person, but they pass you on to someone else. And sometimes things do work out with someone and they pass you on to someone else. So it's important to always be learning, always be a beginner in some way. I think younger people tend to feel like they know everything. And I did when I was younger. It's not uncommon. And it's good to keep learning whatever you can learn, and whether it's about a new kind of music, biography about a composer that they like, but your story is not going to go like theirs. I think you have to be in this because of the music, not for any kind of glory or fame or anything like that. I think you have to really love to do it, or it will eat you alive.
Any cool projects, upcoming projects you're working on?
Yeah, I just finished this cool project that's a web series. It's the first couple episodes of a web series called Love Your Life. It's a story of a man that came out of the closet at 29 and he's experiencing his true self for the first time. I'm working on this wonderful, I guess you call it a proof of concept, where you put together a small sample to get more interest. It's called This Boy's Vida, and it's about I don't want to give away too much, but there's this young boy in New York City who they're struggling so much that they have to steal to stay alive.
Oh, wow.
This boy, when stealing just some basic things from a supermarket, it's either the Bronx or the Heights in New York City, he gets caught and we don't know what's going to happen. It's really a fascinating look at someone's struggle to be here, how much they appreciate America and the opportunities. And it's based on a true story. This is kind of way out of, I wrote the theme music for a cooking show called Feed Me, which is part of Newsdays. Newsdays, a local paper in New York. And they started doing web series. So the show Feed Me is a cooking show. We're working on just finishing up that theme. Gosh, I know there's some other stuff, doing some mixing on another proof of concept called Mara, which is about a young woman who moves to the city and how her life would turn out. I know there's more, but
seems like your plate's pretty full to me.
But I like a full plate.
Yeah.
I like what I do, so I enjoy coming to work and doing it.
I know you've probably been asked this question so many times, but you got to be sitting watching TV or watching, you go to the movie and you hear your music in the background. But how does that make you feel? Is that just the coolest feeling in the world? Yes.
It's the coolest feeling, and it doesn't get old.
I'm sure it can't get old. You're like, I did that.
It's very cool. And sometimes I want to show my kids. Sometimes they're like, wow, that's Daddy's music. It's funny. My kids think I'm famous.
Well, you kind of are, I guess. Yeah.
No, not really. I wouldn't say that. There's only a handful of composers who people really know who they are or know their names. I think it's rare that people would know what John Williams looked like if they saw him cross the street, or Hans Zimmer or Danny Elfman or any number of guys. And there's lots who I wouldn't know. There's a great composer, Michael Giacchino, he recently did the Jurassic Park, I think Solo, the Star Wars story, he did that. I wouldn't know him if I bumped into him at the grocery store. I wouldn't know him. There's not a lot of glory in film composing, but it's a lot of fun and creative work.
I always find that's kind of disappointing that, we don't get to see a little bit more of the people that kind of work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Because especially too, like the music, music makes or breaks a show or TV. Like there's so many times I've watched something, maybe it's like a little sad or whatever, and then they bring in the music and it's, oh my God, I got to look away while I wipe the tears out of my eyes. You know what I mean? Because the music really ties it all together and really changes the emotion and it makes it impactful.
Yeah. In real life, we don't really say what we mean. We say other things, and then it's up to others to figure out what we mean. We're not very kind to each other in that way. We speak with so much subtext and subtlety and innuendo. And so when we're watching something, the music definitely helps to get across the point that the filmmaker's trying to make, that maybe they didn't have time to capture or just didn't work out, or just making what's already there better. It's a really wonderful thing to do.
You write your music, but also I know sometimes in movies they'll use current popular songs and stuff. How do they do that? Are they familiar with all those songs? Is there a way to search for them? There's so many songs and everything out there.
That's true. So if something's a big hit, like we were talking about Portugal the Man, you have to find the publisher of the song and then get permission, and they'll ask you how much your budget is, how much do you have to spend on this particular thing. And if the number isn't right, they won't even look at your request. There's a lot of red tape. I'll tell you something that most people don't know, most filmmakers don't know, which is kind of a neat thing. So if you have a piece of music, you have the person that wrote it. So you have the musical idea, the notes, the melody, the music itself. That's one form of copyright. Another form of copyright is the vessel that it comes in. Like, is it an audio file, a DVD, a CD? No one's using cassette tapes anymore. Now people are back to vinyl. So the recording itself is one copyright, and the the intellectual property or the song is another. So if you wanted to use a song, for some reason there's 2 publishers and 3 songwriters and a record label, you might need 6 consents to use this particular piece of music. And
Wow.
even getting one or all of those parties to agree on something could be very, very difficult.
Now, is that getting easier at all, though? Because I don't know, like years ago, it used to be musicians didn't want their work in movies and commercials because that was kind of like selling out. And I know now a lot of musicians are kind of saying, hey, this is a way, having our song in these commercials is a way to get in front of people and actually, have our songs go viral. So do you find it's getting easier or about the same?
Well, in that sense, they go to the 1%. So there are these certain acts like the Rolling Stones, people want to use the music. The Beatles, they want to use the music. AC/DC is a big group for licensing music. So a group like that might get dozens of requests a day to use it, where someone who's doesn't have that kind of cachet will struggle to get people to use it. And so there are middlemen and managers and publishers that try to push things or, hey, we can do something that sounds like that. The internet doesn't necessarily make it easier. You can look up, all right, who's the publisher on this and find that information, but actually getting to them. I had a client that was doing a show and they wanted to record somebody singing. Gosh, I can't remember the song, but it was a Christmas standard. And this organization was a faith-based TV network. And I called them or contacted them in September to get a music license. And I couldn't get that done until the middle of December. And this is obviously a song that's used for a certain time of year. They can't really overdo it because it was a classic. And I'm not keeping it. I just don't remember exactly what the song was. And also the people were singing it. So we only needed the publisher. We didn't need a recording of it, which made that easier. Because if we wanted to use a song that had a famous recording, then that would be another bunch of hoops to jump through. So if someone doesn't have millions of dollars and a person that's working on that aspect of music for a film or a TV show, then getting big name work is really near impossible.
Yeah, it seems like everybody wants their piece of the pie as well,
Absolutely. And Of course. And so if a publisher has 15 requests and one says we've got $500 and others say we have $50,000, they're going to call those people first.
Oh, absolutely. Money talks. Money definitely talks.
Yeah, 2 money guys talk.
That's right. We try. We definitely try. So do you have any apps? I mean, your day's very busy. With technology as it is, do you have any apps or books or tips that you may use that keep you more productive?
I was telling Michael earlier this year, I tend to write to-do lists. Apps, I think in terms of my software, I try to keep it as streamlined as possible for the actual writing of the music. I do use quite a bit of technology in that regard. So I always try to keep my computer fast because actually waiting for sounds to load, that can take up a lot of time, especially if you don't know if it's going to work. So in terms of everyday apps, I use my Uber app a lot to get to work.
In the city, I can imagine, yeah.
IMDb is one of my favorites. Twitter, Instagram. I still go on Facebook, but not as much. And LinkedIn and YouTube a lot. I don't know if you consider that an app, but...
Oh, sure. It's an app. It's an app on my phone.
Yeah. I mean, so many things that you're wondering about, you just type it into YouTube and someone did a video on it.
Oh, yeah.
Like putting together IKEA furniture.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be simple, but it makes me go to YouTube all the time.
Yeah, I bought this electric razor to trim sideburns, and I wanted to change the blade on it. I couldn't figure it out, and I just typed in the model into YouTube, and I saw a video. It was really simple.
It's unbelievable nowadays.
Yeah.
Somebody puts a video for everything. It's awesome. Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought that? Wow. And you're right. With IKEA furniture, you can do that. You could put it up, and it tells you how to do it, and it's still hard for me to do the IKEA furniture, even with YouTube.
If you wanted our listeners to know one thing, what would it be?
Music takes time to create. we have Spotify and all of these apps that get us whatever we want to listen to so fast. But the people who make the music, it took a lot of time to learn how to do it and to put it together. And I just hope people will appreciate that as technology moves forward faster and faster, and that keeping something human like creating music is a good thing. And I hope we continue to do that.
No, that's great. That's awesome. And I hope people do realize that there are actual people behind the music that they're listening to every day in their earbuds and Spotify and all their apps.
Yeah.
It's not all made by machines. I mean, there are actual heartbeats behind that music that put a lot of time and effort into it.
Yes, very well said. I guess I hope that that the humans don't get replaced in everything.
You know, I used to be in a band and our drummer had a sticker on his kits that said, drum machines have no soul. And I always believe that, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's always best to have people involved in some way. And machines are very sophisticated. They can do a lot. It's funny, whenever I talk to Alexa, I'm always very polite because I don't know what the future is going to hold.
Or who's listening.
Oh, we better be nice to Alexa. Maybe that's how the Skynet uprising really starts. Someone was, bad mouthing Alexa.
Or just being rude. I thank the GPS constantly. There's a car aside on the road in 20 feet. I say thank you.
Okay, so if we have one takeaway from today's show, it's be nice to your technology, people, so we don't have a robot uprising.
Exactly. And I named mine Sharon.
Oh, okay.
My Waze app, Sharon. I say thank you, Sharon.
My Waze is Lola. Yep.
That's great.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. It was a pleasure to have you sit down with us today, Andrew.
Oh, pleasure's mine.
You can find Andrew, just to let you know, at fourscore7music.com if you want to find his website and read more about him. Again, it was great to have you with us, and we hope to hear more from you soon.
Yes, that would be great.
All right, it is now time for the question. The question is, how do I build my net worth starting from nothing? And that is a very general question. I mean, if we are talking from absolute nothing, from flatline zero instead of negative, you're starting at ground zero. I mean, you're going to have to build some income or you're going to have to reduce your liabilities. So you're basically going to have to create a budget, in my mind, figure out what your income and your expenses are and go from there. I'm kind of going to go back and forth with you on this, Mike, because you may definitely have some different views about this than I do, but the budget to me sounds like the first step in this. If he's basically flat, I don't know what nothing means, so it's kind of difficult, but what do you think about starting with a budget?
Well, first of all, I'm over here clapping. If you're the individual, you're starting at zero. Hey, good for you. I mean, you're probably further ahead than a lot of people. I know when we first started, ours was definitely negative and took a lot of scratching and clawing just to get back to that 0 point. So if you're at zero, good for you.
That's what I'm saying. If they're at flat and they're not at negative, I mean, that's a great starting point.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So I think the point that you made about building a budget and finding out exactly how much you've got coming in and what you have going out and where it's going. Yeah, that's great. That's kind of your roadmap to get to your destination. And I think your destination at this point is just, you need to save some cash at this point, because once you've got some cash on hand, then you've got freedom to make choices. And all the while you're analyzing your budget, you're figuring out where you can spend less money. You're trying to find out how you can make more money from your day job, perhaps, or, if you're somebody that's unlocked the side hustle that actually makes some money, unlike me, I just blog and don't make any money. Good for you. That would be phenomenal.
I was going to say, I feel you there. I feel you.
Okay. All right. Good spirits. But yeah, I mean, if you can find other ways to boost the income, reduce the expenses, just save some cash. Once you start saving cash, whether it's for retirement or it's just for savings in general, a lot of people, I guess I'll speak personally, so I don't want to speak for a lot of people, whoever those might be. But when I first started saving, my interpretation, my view of saving was, okay, well, that means I got to save for retirement. Saving for retirement is phenomenal and that's great and you need to do that. But you also need to save, whether it's for an emergency fund or just saving in an online savings account that maybe you'll use it in a couple of years, maybe you won't. But there are multiple ways that you can save money, and there are different accounts and different types of places that you can put money. But once, you start doing that and start saving some cash, then now you've got some options. Rather than going into debt, taking out a loan to buy a business, buy a house, or, if you just want to fund a little bit of time for yourself to look and find maybe a job that you love to do a little bit more, or, a side hustle that'll actually make you some cash. Once you've got cash in the bank, you've got more freedom to make those choices.
And that's what I was thinking. I mean, not only do you want to build more cash, but I mean, you don't want to build more liabilities as well. You don't want to build more debt. So you can look at earning more in your career. You could look at the side hustles, but you don't want to go into debt over stupid things. I mean, obviously you did pretty well already being even right now. So financially you're doing something right. So you don't want to start going into more debt and increasing your liability side of the equation.
No, that's a great point, Rob. I mean, right. Yeah, you're at this point, and you've, like you said, you've made good choices to this point not to be in a hole. So keep doing that. Keep making good choices, evaluating those purchases, making sure that it's something that's going to advance your position, something that you either, value and want, or something that you really need. And just make sure that it's not, you're not just spending money frivolously. Now that you've got this zero net worth and you've got some cash coming in, I could just spend, here, there, and everywhere. I think some of our physician bloggers I've seen them talk about, okay, well, I'm out of residency. Now I'm starting to actually see the doctor paycheck. I'm going to start spending like a doctor should spend, right? I mean, I know for us, when my wife's a dentist, when she was going through dental school, she didn't make any money for 4 years. And I had my job, but then once she got out of dental school and started working and earning an income, our income situation looked a lot different. But if we didn't really evaluate our choices, we would have forgot that, okay, well, the income has increased. There's also some student loan payments that are coming right behind that. So you better start saving and preparing for those.
Right. Just because the income increased doesn't mean that the spending should increase.
Right.
Not at all.
Right. And they're both going to increase, right? But if you can find a way to do it disproportionately so that the income can increase at a higher rate than the spending will, then, that's your margin. That's where you can start saving some cash and having some freedom.
Absolutely. All right. So basically our advice is keep doing what you're doing. Try to make a little more money, either at your full time, at your 9 to 5, or a side hustle, and don't let the liabilities creep up on you. It is now time for the takeaway portion of our show. We found out today that net worth is a key indicator of your financial health, and it should be tracked consistently over time to find out whether you're headed in the right direction of a positive net worth or a negative net worth, and how you can adjust your assets and liabilities and the different variables and parameters to help you go in the right direction. And we also found out there are many apps and programs to help you calculate your net worth and track it, including building your own spreadsheet like my temporary co-host here, Mike. If you're familiar with the calculations and you can lay it out the way you want it, it's pretty darn cool to see that graph go the right way, I think. Mike, I think you're enjoying it, aren't you?
Well, I am, especially when you can manipulate the formulas. You can make that graph look exactly how you want it to.
You can't do that. That's not legal.
Oh, all right.
It's legal, but it's not legit.
Sorry, my bad. No, it is. It's nice, and personally, the fact that if you take the time and design and you have the capability to make your own spreadsheet, you can take a look at exactly everything that you want to and forget the stuff that you don't really care as much about. So there's that component as well.
That's great. And you can choose what assets you're going to include. Some people, like we said, include their vehicles, include their home. It really is a personal thing, whether you want to include that or not. Again, I'd like to thank Mike Monfredi from mikedupblog.com for playing co-host with me today. I really do appreciate it. You can find us at 2moneyguys.com. We are on Twitter at 2moneyguys. Mike, let us know where we can find you, because you did a great job today.
Oh, thanks so much, Rob. I appreciate the opportunity. You can find me on Twitter as well. It's at realmikedup, MIKEDUP. And then you can find me over at the website, mikedupblog.com. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Rob. I appreciate it.
Awesome. I really appreciate you being here. Don't forget to send your friends over to listen to the podcast and send us some 5-star reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you may listen to us. All right. For Mike and myself, Robert, the middle-aged money guy, have a great one.